Coming up in the next 30 minutes, at least 22 dead in mass shooting at 2 locations across Lewiston, Maine. Suspect at large. President Biden offers full federal support.
Police are currently searching for a Robert R. Card, 4/4 of 1983 of Bowdoin. Card is considered armed and dangerous.
Israeli government holds war cabinet. Prime Minister Netanyahu says working round the clock before potential ground invasion.
The timing of the military's operation, the timing is determined by consensus by the war cabinet.
UN Security Council fails again to take action on the Israel-Hamas war. Both Russia and US resolutions fail to garner enough support. Pro-Israel resolution is first act from new US House leader Republican Mike Johnson, elected for the post after weeks of chaos. India records best ever performance in Para-Asian Games, surpasses previous best of 72 medals it achieved in Jakarta 2018. First up, the big news we're tracking this hour. An emergency alert has been sounded in a county in US's Maine after 22 people were killed and dozens were injured in the shootings. Police has launched a massive operation to catch the gunman, who has been identified as Robert Card, and asked locals in Lewiston to stay inside their homes. Local police posted a photo of the shooter, Robert Card, on Facebook carrying what appeared to be a semi-automatic style weapon inside a bowling alley. Maine's police also held a press conference where it was said that mass shooting suspect is still at large and asked people to not contact the shooter if seen anywhere. Instead, call the emergency helpline number immediately.
Currently searching for a Robert R. Card, 4/4 of 1983 of Bowdoin. Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way. The shelter-in-place order that currently stands in Lewiston remains. A vehicle, which was a vehicle of interest in this incident, was located in Lisbon, and we are now also asking residents in Lisbon to shelter in place.
U.S. President Joe Biden spoke to the governor of the Maine County lawmakers about the shooting in Lewiston. According to the White House, he offered full federal support in wake of this horrific attack. As Israel prepares for a ground invasion on Gaza, the Israeli government convened a war cabinet in Tel Aviv. Leaders of opposition parties have also participated in the meeting. The conflict between Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas entered its 20th day on Thursday. More than 7,900 people have been killed in the conflict that began on October 7th. Before the meeting, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strongly said that Israel will go into Gaza, but refused to say when. During his televised address, Netanyahu said that the decision on when the forces will go into Gaza will be taken by the war cabinet. The war cabinet of Israel, which was formed just 5 days after the start of the conflict, includes the Prime Minister himself, army personnel, and the leader of one of the centrist opposition parties.
We are raining hellfire on Hamas. We have already killed thousands of terrorists, and this is only the beginning. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many. I want to be clear. The timing of the military's operation, the timing is determined by consensus by the war cabinet. Together with Chief of Staff and the Cabinet, we are working to ensure the ideal conditions for our troops for the next operations.
The United Nations Security Council has rejected 2 resolutions on the escalation of violence in Israel and Gaza. The United States and Russia each put forward a draft calling for the Council to address the shortages of food, water and other necessities in Gaza. But Russia's resolution demanded a humanitarian ceasefire, something the US has not supported. Sally Patterson has more on this.
Negotiations were going on right up to the last minute, with the scheduled Security Council meeting pushed back to allow talks to continue. Russia had already said it would not support the US draft resolution, given the absence of language calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. The US argues any ceasefire will give Hamas the ability to rest and get ready to continue launching attacks against Israel. Instead, it called for humanitarian pauses to allow aid to get into Gaza. Now, Russia then put forward its own alternative text for representatives to vote on. Speaking before the vote, the US said their resolution was strong and balanced, and they had listened to all members. They said Russia had put forward their resolution in bad faith. But Russia said its draft wasn't political and accused the US of playing politics. Meanwhile, China accused the US of ignoring member states and having double standards, calling the draft out of balance. Both China and Russia vetoed the resolution. Russia's draft also didn't get enough votes to pass. This was the second time in 10 days the Council considered drafts on the crisis in the Middle East. It so far failed to adopt any resolutions on the recent escalations in Israel and Gaza. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
After the UN chief remarks, Israel has refused visas to the senior UN officials. Now, the United Nations chief has clarified where does this pact go and what effect could it have on the situation. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh tells us more.
After the UN chief made the remarks that Hamas didn't act in a vacuum, Israel didn't take kindly to it. The Israeli ambassador to the UN hit back at the UN chief, saying that he's siding with murderers and is justifying terrorism. And then the UN chief, in fact, the Israeli foreign minister Eli Cohen, who is in New York to attend the UN Security Council's meeting open debate, cancelled his appointment with the UN chief, and they refused visa to the UN humanitarian aid chief. But clearly Israel made it very clear that it's not taking kindly to these remarks by the UN, though the UN chief clarified that he did not side with Hamas here. He said what happened in the horrific acts of Hamas cannot justify anything, and Palestinians are not responsible for it. So he clarified, and he said that those acts remained horrendous, and therefore it's very clear that it is a spat, but how far will it go, we'll have to see in the coming days.
Meanwhile, European Union heads of state will gather in Brussels on Thursday for a two-day meeting of the European Council. The leaders have a packed agenda, which includes the situation in the Middle East, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and agreeing on the next EU budget. Alex Cadier reports from Brussels.
Well, the first order of business for the European Union's 27 heads of state and government will be to discuss the call for a humanitarian pause in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. That's a move backed by UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Now, countries like Germany and the Czech Republic have been reluctant to fully endorse the move for fear of not seeming supportive enough of Israel, while others, like Ireland and Spain, have pushed for this to become EU policy as quickly as possible. It would appear that leaders will almost certainly call for a humanitarian pause after the meeting, a move opposed for now by the United States. But even if they do, whether or not Israel will listen is still unclear. Also on the agenda will be the EU's support of Ukraine. President Zelensky will address the leaders via video link, and EU officials insist that they have seen no fatigue from member states and that the bloc's support for Ukraine will not waver. Nevertheless, for the first time since the start of Russia's invasion, Ukraine is not top of the agenda at the European Council. Global turmoil aside, the EU leaders will also discuss the bloc's most contentious issue, migration. Terrorist attacks in France and Belgium have meant questions are being asked of the EU's asylum system, with many member states calling for tighter security measures to be rolled out. Finally, the EU's economy will be discussed, with member states poring over plans for the bloc's long-term budget. Here, again, some serious debate is expected, with certain countries reluctant to pay more into the European Union's coffers. In all, an agenda packed with contentious issues for the EU's 27 heads of state and government. Alex Kadeh in Brussels reporting for DD India.
An Israeli airstrike hit a multi-floor residential building in Gaza City on Wednesday afternoon. The people in Gaza were seen running away in streets to take shelter and removing rubble from the site of the strike. Israel started its aerial blitz against Gaza after Hamas militants stormed southern Israeli towns in a shock infiltration. US President Joe Biden has discussed the situation in Gaza with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the telephonic conversation, the leaders also discussed efforts to secure the release of hostages, including American citizens held by Hamas. President Biden emphasized on the continuous flow of humanitarian aid to the civilians. Israeli chief military spokesperson Daniel Hagari, in his regular briefing on Wednesday, said the war with Hamas will be long as Israel stepped up bombings of Gaza ahead of a ground invasion.
This war will be long, and in order to meet the goals of this war, we need resilience, we need faith, and we need patience. Military forces are deployed extensively around the Gaza Strip. We are ready on defense, on offense, and we are also preparing for the next stage of this war.
The conflict is widening beyond Gaza, with Hamas in the southern front and Lebanon on the northern front continue to bound rockets. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh tells us more about it.
The conflict is showing signs of widening. There is a threat of spillover, but it's already started showing signs of widening. Hitting Gaza was always the stated objective of Israel, saying that Hamas, because it's based out of there, but it's also the hits that you see in West Bank and the arrests that you see in West Bank are primarily the Israeli Defense Forces say they are Hamas supporters operating out of West Bank. Because remember, Hamas had won elections in West Bank also. They may rule Gaza or be the government or run the affairs in Gaza Strip, but they are also, members of parliament in the West Bank, though Israel doesn't recognize that. So there's the Israeli logic of hitting targets and making arrests in West Bank is that there are weapons being accumulated there, and there is a plan being made to hit Israel from West Bank. Therefore, it needs to act in self-defense. Hezbollah is continuously firing. Yesterday, rockets were fired from the Lebanon side, both on the tanks, and some fell in the open. Not much damage was done due to them, but Israel is responding. And in fact, if you look, Israel bombed, Syrian bases yesterday again. This was after it had bombed the Aleppo and the Damascus airports. So clearly there seems to be a certain spillover, but not the full-fledged regional escalation of which the threat looms large. That perhaps is not happening because there are international pressures. The US is working, US and the other Western countries are working closely with their Arab counterparts, with their Arab allies, primarily Egypt, Saudi Arabia, to see that it does not, conflagrate further. So that is where things stand, but the threat very much remains.
Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip has led to an acute shortage of fuel, which is hindering vital services. While a few trucks carrying aid are being allowed in, Israel has continued to block the delivery of fuel to keep it out of the hands of Hamas. The shortage is affecting the function of paramedics and civil defense crew in Gaza. Doctors in Gaza have called upon residents to donate any stored fuel they may have. The World Health Organization has warned that every hour of delay in delivering further aid puts more lives at risk. So that was about Israel-Hamas conflict. Now we'll take a look at other stories that are making it to the headlines from across the world. Japan's largest auto show opened to the press, with the automakers stressing their commitment to developing electric vehicles. The Japan Mobility Show, formerly the Tokyo Auto Show, is being held in a major auto market where both domestic makers and consumers have been slow to embrace greener cars. And now we shift to Bangladesh, where cyclone Hamoon made landfall in the southeast region on Wednesday. It brought with it strong winds and rain, damaging hundreds of homes and killing at least 3 people. Houses and tarpaulin-covered bamboo shanties were also damaged in the Rohingya refugee camps. Most people were evacuated to shelters, but many families slept outside. Power supply and internet connections remain down. Up next, a short break, but after the break, when we come back, we'll tell you more. A bit relaxation for only some of the Canadians hoping to visit India. And Goa all geared up for the 37th National Games to be held in the city for the first time.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live and I'm Preeti. Let's continue getting you more international updates. In a remarkable move, US President Joe Biden and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in the Oval Office to strengthen the alliance. The two leaders discussed key priorities, including combating China's rising dominance in the Indo-Pacific region, supporting Ukraine and standing with Israel in the wake of Hamas's terrorist attack. While their strategic discussions encompassed crucial spheres like technology, clean energy, defense, and notably the groundbreaking AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine agreement. DD India's correspondent Nick Harper gets us more.
Well, China was very much in the background throughout the meeting between these two leaders and really in almost every agreement and initiative that they spoke about. They touched on technology, national security and climate change. And all of those areas were really about trying to counter China's influence. They spoke about AUKUS, that's the submarine pact between Australia, the US and Britain, with Australia gaining access to nuclear-powered submarines. They reaffirmed that deal. It was signed 2 years ago, but the US Congress is still in a state of needing to pass legislation that would allow Australia to get access to those nuclear-powered subs and the technology to build them.
I also see it through AUKUS, where together with the United Kingdom, we're making generational investments in our shared security. Democrats and Republicans alike understand the strategic value AUKUS brings to our nations, and I urge Congress to pass our AUKUS legislation this year.
Australia appreciates the administration's efforts to operationalise AUKUS and work with Congress to pass the legislation needed to realise our AUKUS ambitions. AUKUS will drive innovation and cooperation to provide the United States, Australia and the United Kingdom with improved capability to help secure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific.
And they also spoke about trying to gain an upper hand over China in the Indo-Pacific region, specifically coming up with a new infrastructure plan, a co-financing marine infrastructure project plan to the tune of $65 million. Well, they'll be financing undersea cables that will be boosting internet connectivity to various Pacific island countries, because Australia and the US both see too much Chinese influence in those Pacific island nations. They touched on the South China Sea. They said that they strongly oppose the destabilising actions in the South China Sea. Biden referencing that spat over the weekend where Chinese vessels collided with Philippine boats. They touched on Taiwan, speaking about the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And if all of those global issues here on Earth weren't enough to worry about, they also spoke about space, with plans for the United States companies to launch space missions from Australia in the coming years. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Later, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden hosted Australian Prime Minister Albanese and Geordie Hayden for a state dinner. Toasting to partnership and to the future, both the leaders referred to their country's security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and their people-to-people ties during their turn at the lecture ahead of the dinner. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin were among those in attendance. After more than 3 weeks of a speakerless House, U.S. Congressman Mike Johnson has finally been elected as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The prolonged vacancy disrupted Congress's ability to function as Republicans faced challenges in reaching a consensus on a nominee. Mike called up a resolution supporting Israel in his first action as the leader of the U.S. House of Representatives. Again, Nick Harper reports further on the matter.
Well, it's a funny old world, the world of US politics. 36 hours ago, hardly anyone had heard of Mike Johnson. Now, he's been catapulted to fame. And after 22 days, 14 candidates, 4 nominees and 4 floor votes, the House of Representatives once again has a Speaker. And that Speaker is a staunch Conservative from Louisiana. He's also the least experienced Speaker that the House has had in 140 years. He has never served in a senior position. He's never held a full committee chair. But he's now second in line to the President after the Vice President, a very powerful position in Washington. He's also one of the people who pushed conspiracy theories about election fraud after the 2020 presidential election. He backed those Trump claims that the election had been stolen from the former president. But now he's the Speaker of the House. After the last Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted just over 3 weeks ago. And then, of course, we had days during which Republicans were unable to coalesce around a single candidate that enough of them could back. Johnson's to-do list is particularly long. He has to deal with White House demands for more than $106 billion of funding for Ukraine and Israel in their conflicts. And then there's the looming government shutdown.
This entire group is going to go back to the House floor, and we are going to pass our resolution in support of the nation of Israel.
All of those things will be very difficult for a congressman with little experience, having served in the House for only 6 years. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
India resumes visa services to Canadians for select categories on Thursday, a month after it had suspended following tensions with the North American country. The Indian High Commission in Ottawa said that the High Commission and Indian Consulate General in Toronto and Vancouver decided to resume visa services for 4 categories, that is entry, business, medical and conference. It said that emergency situations will be addressed by the High Commission and Consulates General. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to visit the Western Indian state of Maharashtra and Goa today to inaugurate various developmental projects. In Maharashtra, the Prime Minister will launch projects worth over 7,500 crore rupees aimed at benefiting over 86 lakh farmers. The Prime Minister will also go to Shirdi around 1 p.m. where he will perform puja and darshan at Sri Sai Baba Samadhi Temple. He will also inaugurate the new Darshan Queue complex at the temple and then travel to Goa to inaugurate the 37th National Games at Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in South Goa. Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant, Youth Affairs and Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur will also be in attendance at the event. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has chaired the meeting of the 43rd edition of Pragati involving centre and state governments on Wednesday. During the meeting, he reviewed 8 key projects spread across 7 states having a cumulative worth of around 31,000 crore rupees. The Prime Minister also emphasized that PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan portal, in conjunction with technologies such as satellite imagery, can help address various issues of implementation and planning relating to location and land requirements for projects. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, on his visit to Kyrgyzstan at the 22nd Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet, delivered his address and called for working together for stability around the world.
Rising tensions and increasing number of hotspots around the world. This has sharply spiked volatility and placed significant strain on global economic growth. Therefore, we at SCO should work together to promote stability and prosperity in the region by strictly adhering to principles of international law, respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity, and encouraging economic cooperation.
Indian Army Chief General Manoj Pandi delivered a keynote address at the Chanakya Defence Dialogue today. During the dialogue, Pandi talked about leveraging technology and modernization to achieve better battlefield effects.
So let me upfront say that modernization and technology infusion is central to our capability development programs and initiatives. And our attempt has been to leverage, especially the right minds that you have. How can you leverage their capability? How soon and how quickly, and which manner is, I think, the key. So what have we done? We've identified 45 niche technologies that we need to follow. And in each of this, we have listed out as to how we will progress. There are, I think, close to 120 indigenous projects pertaining to niche technologies which are currently at different stages of fruition.
With the advent of winters, India's national capital, Delhi, has started witnessing poor air quality, with monitoring agencies saying that any significant improvement is unlikely over the next few days. Air quality index stands at 256 in the poor category on Thursday. Following the weather change, the air quality in the region usually dips during the months of October to November due to many climatic factors and because of the stubble burning by farmers in the neighbouring states of Punjab and Haryana. Moreover, pollution during the recent festive week has also added to the existing issue. Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines. The Enforcement Directorate raid is underway at the house of West Bengal Minister Pria Maliks at Salt Lake in Kolkata. The searches are conducted in connection with Malik's alleged involvement in a case of corruption in ration distribution. Search operations were also conducted at 8 other flats connected with the minister. The Election Commission of India will appoint Bollywood actor Rajkumar Rao as its national icon on Thursday, ahead of assembly election in 5 states. The commission appoints prominent Indians as national icons to motivate voters to participate in elections. In sports, India created history at the ongoing Asian Para Games in Hangzhou in China by achieving their best ever medal haul on Thursday. The Indian medal tally has swelled to 73 medals and is still counting. The country's previous best was 72 medals, which they achieved in Indonesia in 2018. India had won 14 medals at the 2010 edition and 33 in the 2014 edition. India also broke its record for winning the most gold medals in a single edition of the Asian Para Games after Sachin Sarjirao Khilari won gold in the men's shot put F46 event. Goa is all set to host the Indian National Games for the first time. The Games will be held in Goa from October 26th to November 9th. Also, the state has made extensive arrangements in the run-up to the grand opening ceremony that will witness Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurating the sporting extravaganza today evening. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.